Okay, we're going to talk about playing an outside third. Again, with all our techniques, we like to break them up into segments. First, we'll talk to the kids about alignment, stance, their eyes, their pedal, cushion, break, and finally the finish. Okay, as far as playing an outside third, again, we'll start with the alignment. We'll start with the corner down here at the bottom. His alignment, initially, we'd like it to be 7 to 8 yards deep, 1 yard outside the number one receiver. But there are some things that will determine whether he'll line up inside or outside. Ideally, we like him to line up outside, but we'll give him rules to determine whether he'll line up inside or outside that number one receiver. And the rules that we give him is determined by what we call dividers. So if the ball's on the hash as it is here, it's on the right hash as the defensive right hash. So now our divider to the right into the boundary would actually be the numbers. So this wide receiver into the boundary is actually lined up outside our divider, which is the numbers. So we like that corner to be 7 to 8 yards deep, 1 yard inside. Now we look to the field, which is to the defensive left. The divider now for the field is going to be a little different from the boundary because the ball's on the hash. The divider to the field is actually going to be halfway between the numbers and the hash. So right now, this wide receiver, as the defense looking from the defense perspective, that's lined up to the left, he's actually outside the divider point. So we'll want that corner to actually line up 7 to 8 yards deep, 1 yard inside. And both corners playing their third, they will be responsible for playing their third, but they'll be keying two as they play their third. And if two goes vertical in their third, if both guys go vertical, both corners will be responsible for overlapping and splitting the difference between those two receivers, and they'll favor that number two receiver. And we do this to help that free safety out. So if we do get the four vertical, we're going to try to midpoint most of these routes and try to help that free safety as he plays the middle of the field. And we do this by telling the corners that their third exists from the sidelines to about 1 yard inside the hash. So as they split the difference on that two vertical, they got to make sure they favor that number two receiver. On this particular route, we start down here at the bottom again with our stance, with our alignment. We've already talked about our alignment, and and now our stance is going to be shoulder width apart. We're always going to have our inside foot back. We're going to have the weight on the balls of our feet, slight ankle bend, slight knee bend. And again, we're going to have our weight slightly forward. We want to have our chest out over our feet, eyes up, and hands ready to pedal. And as we take our first step, we're always going to step with that inside foot first. So the weight will distribute to the outside foot, and we'll start our pedal with that inside foot. Again, our eyes for the corner or guys will be back inside, and he'll be reading through the three-step. And then now if it's not three-step, then he'll continue to pedal, and he'll be reading two to see if he needs to overlap. Because again, if it is any type of quick game, he should get some underneath help by any of the invert players. Here on this particular play, we'll start down here at the bottom. Receiver comes out the corner. It's a nice job with his stance, his start, his pedal. If the receiver proceeds to break his cushion, he'll be ready to open up and split the difference. Again, we get a quick route. We get pretty much a quick route here, but the corner's not able to absolutely break on it because there's still a threat of number two going vertical. So the corner chooses to get ready to zone off. And again, if this ball is thrown, he'll be ready to side plant and come back to the ball. And again, if this ball is thrown quick, even with the threat of number two going vertical, the corner should get some help by the underneath safety, or here it'll be our safety, but it could be a backer depending on which way the formation is. And the safety does a nice job of playing the curl flat and reading the quarterback drop and seeing the hitch on the outside, which the corner should be communicating with, and them telling him, that there's a possibility or that there is a hitch, which allow him to expand to the flat, and the corner will actually be over the top of this route. Okay, initially we'll start down here at the bottom. The ball's on the hash, so our divider point will still be the numbers. We've got a wide split by 1 to our right, so the corner should be lined up inside, same depth. Again, up top, we've got a wide split by 1, so the corner should actually be lined up inside, which he is. Corner up top has actually a 2 and a 3 threat. So if any one of those guys go vertical, he's got to be ready to overlap. We'll start with the corner at the top. He takes his pedal, and again, as he works out, he's going to make sure he zones that thing off and he's over the top of anything in his third. So we tell him he needs to be 2 to 3 yards over the top of anything any vertical that occurs in his third. Right now, he's got 1 going vertical up top. He's got 2 going vertical up top, so he'll need to split the difference. So right now, the corner does a great job of weaving and splitting the difference between 1 and 2, and he's going to favor 2, which he does. And he does a great job of zoning off, still keeping the scope of the quarterback, balls thrown, does a nice job of breaking the upfield shoulder on the route, and he does a nice job of finishing here. Down at the bottom, corner's only got 1 threat, so he's inside. This third can be played one of 2 ways, which people do it different. With him only having the threat of 1, some people like to actually play this third more like a man technique, and the only difference would be if it's played with a man technique, he can make a man turn here on any vertical route. If you prefer him to play zone on the backside with just 1 wide out, then once the receiver breaks his cushion here, he'll actually zone turn this. So there's probably room for either way, because even with 1 receiver on the backside and you have 3 quicks to the front side, that number 3 to the front side still could cross the formation and come back into the boundary corner's third. So if that is a threat of it, we would like him to zone turn and still see his whole third. Again, pre-snap is going to determine where we line up. The corner into the boundary with the ball on the hash. His divider is the numbers. Receivers lined up inside the numbers, so now the corner can be 7 to 8 yards deep, 1 yard outside. At the top, the corner actually has his wide out right there just inside the divider, so he's playing outside, 1 yard outside, but he still has a 2 threat, so he has to be aware of it. If you get the verticals, he's still got to be ready to overlap the 2. Starting down here at the bottom, with 1 wide out to his side, the corners down here still has a third, but he can be a little more aggressive playing his third, knowing he still has some underneath help by the backer who's going to widen. So right now the corner does a great job of reading and filling the quarterback drop and filling the route. Good job on the transition, driving on the route. Corner up top, he now has the threat of 2 going vertical. Initially, the underneath backer does a great job of collisioning, but the receiver is still climbing vertical, so he'll need the zoning off, get inside of 1, and be ready to be over the top of 2.